recognising who you are,
Do that. I've always known who I am, and I'm not defined by revenue. It's more a matter of letting go and it's
Thank you, members of Synod. Would you give your attention to the moderator, please?
Members of Synod, we are now going to turn our attention to the Act 2 project, which there have been a few words about that already, but we're going to hear from Reverend Sharon Hollis, the President of the National Assembly, and Andrew Johnson, who's the project lead for the Act 2 project. They're going to bring us a report, and we'll be moving into working groups in about half an hour. So thank you, Sharon and Andrew. Sharon.
Thank you, and I think we've got some slides. If we could have them, please, that would be helpful. Moderator, members of Synod, I'm Sharon Hollis, the Assembly President, and for the purposes of this report, the Chair of the Act 2 Steering Committee. I live on the lands of the Wurundjeri people, and I pay my respects to the Wurundjeri people as the sovereign owners of this land. I pay my respects to their elders past and present and to their descendants. I want to begin first of all by thanking this Synod for the very generous support, financial and people support, that they have provided for the work of Act 2. And we are very grateful for it. And it is only this report would not have been possible, and the work that has been done to bring this report would not have been possible without the support of a number of synods across the Assembly. So we say thank you very much. Today we are inviting you as a synod to consider the Act 2 report in response to God's call as part of the important collective discernment phase of the Act 2 project, which is rapidly coming to an end. This year, Act 2 has already moved through the explore phase, where the Act 2 team intentionally went out to our church and listened to what all of you had to say. And this is recorded in the What We Have Heard section of the report. We heard about the hopes. I don't know, maybe you wanted popes as well, I can't. We're still open for options. We heard about the hopes people had for the future of our church and the fears about the burdens and the complexities of our responsibilities and structures, about the opportunities that spring up when we are open to God's call in the communities in which we serve, and the faithfulness of people to act on that call, and how those actions can be impacted by insufficient resourcing or unhelpful structures. We commenced this time of collective discernment that we're now in with uniting in prayer, and we're delighted with the response across the church, the way congregations, councils and agencies are prayed for others, meeting congregations or councils or agencies across the length and breadth of this land. And it included a Zoom prayer one night where we were joined by hundreds of uniting church people praying for the future of our church and for this period of discernment. And so now we are focused on the collective discernment phase of Act 2. We are God's people and this is God's church. And as we look to the future, we do so with hearts open to where God is leading us, with joy as we see the opportunities that will come as we are inspired by the Spirit, and with the intentional honesty to admit where we have failed. The directions for communities of faith and the options for governance and resourcing in the report are brought to the church to explore in this phase, and that is what we will be inviting you to talk about later today in your working groups. We want to say thank you to all of you for being part of this important work. Not right now, but when you go to your working groups, we want to hear your wisdom about where the Spirit is leading us.
Thank you, moderator. My name is Andrew Johnson from the country of the Ngunnawal and the Ngambri people, and I am the Act 2 project lead from the National Assembly. I also want to acknowledge Jessica Haley-Brown, who is a member of the steering committee, nominated from the Synod of Victoria and Tasmania, and we are grateful for all her wisdom and gifts. It's a pleasure to be with you, and as I go through the presentation, you will notice some QR codes. I'm in VicTas, and so they know what QR codes are, unlike the Western Australians, which has links to specific work on the Act 2 website, or this is not just for your fan, but also you can use the QR code there as well. If you miss it, there's one at the end that takes you to all of the links. Now, work continues on the entire scope of work for the decision of the 16th Assembly, asked of the project. And you'll see there the 4 work streams that we are focused on. We have been particularly focused over the last few weeks on the articles, reflections and provocations on our theological culture, and all of those, nearly 98,500 words, have been published on the website in 39 different articles. We've also completed the work of the national forums, which have gathered together the range of perspectives across the life of the Church on our national work, and have been drawn together with the work of the Church Council conversations in the Explore phase about our national work. And you can find all the forums and summaries on the website, and watch back the videos or read the summaries. Today we're particularly focused on Workstream 1 on local communities of faith and discipleship, and Workstream 3 on governance and resourcing. As the President has already mentioned, the culmination of the exploration phase is contained in the report to the Church, Act 2, in response to God's call. There's a pretty picture there, or you can get it from the website. I saw someone reading it on the iPad just before. It seeks to take a long, loving look at the reality of our life in all our rich diversity. It also seeks to be honest about the consistency of the systemic issues we face as a whole church. Through the current phase, we have been focused on specific directions, key changes and options, and we have been inviting the Church to frame this conversation through a set of collective questions. How might this make a difference in our context within the Church? How might this make a difference to our life together as a church? What opportunities might this offer us? What are the risks? What do we need to think about as we implement this? As part of Workstream 1 of the project, focused on local communities of faith and discipleship, we are offering an integrated set of 4 directions. On the screen, you'll see a 1-page summary of these directions, and later a 1-page summary of the options. These are both available on the website, either in graphical form, or for the options, a table as well, and your small group leaders have a copy of those as well, if they're an aid to you in your discernment groups. The language of councils is intentionally different from our existing council names to invite us to reimagine the shape of our life. Over the next couple of minutes, I want to briefly introduce these directions, key changes and options. However, both my summary and the diagram are just that, a summary. There is a lot more detail in the report. So let me turn to the integrated set of directions, which we're inviting people to look at together as a holistic package. The first direction is to encourage local communities of discipleship and mission. This direction is about cultivating local communities of faith on making and growing disciples through more consistent and intentional approaches. This direction is also about encouraging local communities of mission that better enable ways of working and relating to the multiple expressions of the uniting church within a community. In all that we do and think about in our governance structures and practices, this direction invites us to keep at the forefront of our considerations how we better enable local communities of discipleship and mission. The second direction is to align the vision of congregation with the vision of congregations in the basis of union. The 5 marks of the congregation, including gathering regularly around the word, celebrating the sacraments, building up one another in love, serving the wider church and serving the world. We want to look to align our structures and practices so that we see all communities of disciples like these as congregations, not necessarily with the existing long list of responsibilities in the regulations at the moment, but as the vision of the basis of union imagines. Therefore, this direction is closely linked to the next, and that is to support fit-for-purpose local governance arrangements. We want local governance arrangements to be right for the context, relieving burdens that weigh communities down, empowering communities to be focused on discipleship, ministry and mission. This may involve designing together imaginative governance arrangements for local councils, different from the existing normative assumptions. Varying the responsibilities of local councils so they can focus on discipleship, ministry and mission. And supporting local councils from time to time through appointing people from what we're describing in this as an area council or the wider oversight council to support a local council, which is expanding on the existing opportunity that occurs in a couple of places at the moment within our regulations. The fourth direction is to recognise there's a time for everything. As Ecclesiastes reminds us, for everything there is a season. We want to make it easier to recognise those new and emerging communities where God is already at work. We want to welcome those communities that want to be a part of our life and into the full participation in, and crucially, transformation of our life as a uniting church. We also know that this is a time when many communities of faith will have their life as we currently know it come to an end. We need to work with communities to do this pastorally and effectively, in assurance that God can birth something new. These four directions will not alone renew our church. Rather, they are offered a renewed set of tools to address systemic issues we have heard and provide space for communities to recenter their life on inviting and growing people in the way and company of Jesus. Now I'd like to turn to the key changes and options offered as part of Workstream 3 about how we better govern and resource our whole life as a church. These are offered as a diverse alternative range of options which arose from within the life of the church to address the challenges we face and which we offer for your discernment. So let me turn to each of the options in turn. Option 1 imagines the most ambitious change to the shape of our life, imagining 3 councils where we currently have 4. It imagines local councils shaped by the principles outlined in the directions. A new field council, different from both existing presbyteries and synod, with oversight and administration responsibilities for communities of faith and ministry agents. And a national council with both the existing national responsibilities and shared national administrative responsibilities. Option 2 imagines a much smaller national council focused just on those national identity matters in response to the church. It imagines up to 6 strong regional councils with significant capability and the ability to make regulations. It imagines area councils with oversight of local communities of faith and ministry agents, but without a role in most administrative functions. Option 3 imagines a large national council similar to option 1, or a larger at least. Just 2 regional councils focused on the administration of property trusts, and area councils with a similar range of responsibilities to the field councils in option 1. These 3 options imagine fewer area councils or field councils than the current 33 presbyteries and 6 synods. This is to ensure these councils are well equipped with the resources to fulfil their responsibility. Finally, option 4 imagines our structure similar to our current arrangement. Its key change is that it imagines a strong resource sharing mechanism administered collectively by the national and regional councils to support ministry, mission and governance across the breadth of our country and to achieve the objectives outlined in the key changes that I'll turn to now. Irrespective of the discernment in relation to the options, we have offered a set of key changes, and you'll find them at the beginning of section 6 of the report, that affirm the need for greater clarity about the respective responsibilities of our councils, accountability in the fulfilment of those responsibilities. We also believe it's important to ensure ongoing flexibility to take account for different contexts and to share resources across different councils. It is also important that councils have the capacity, capability and resourcing to fulfil their responsibilities. Finally, we need to recognise arrangements need only be for a time, and we need the agility to keep evolving and adapting. No doubt these directions, key changes and options will raise questions. We have 50 frequently asked questions on the website, and the opportunity now to explore the directions, key changes and options within your working groups. We'll also have a short amount of time to answer any questions for clarifications, and we'll be here all day tomorrow for deeper conversation, including with my colleague Bethany Broadstock, who was introduced before. So as you move into working groups, we've offered a response form which we are offering to all councils and governing bodies across the church. We're inviting you for each of the directions and options. Are you supportive, that is generally warm to this direction? Open to this direction, but with some questions or concerns, or not supportive, generally cool to this direction? We also want to hear your affirmations, questions, or concerns that you have about the directions or the options, or in fact any other part of the report. We invite you to be honest and open. It's important we hear where you believe the Spirit is leading us. What new ideas are sparked? Just as you may have noticed some of your ideas in what is already offered. Now is the time for us to work together with one another about the future shape of our church. We have a small amount of time until the 30th of November to hear from you and across the church on our journey towards the 17th Assembly in July 2024. You're also invited to register for our second online national prayer gathering as we draw to an end the collective discernment phase on the evening of the 30th of November. Now is not the time to watch and wait. Just as the moderator said this before, it is a time for the whole church to pray, participate, and respond as we engage with councils, committees, boards, communities, and individuals all across the life of the church. For me, it has been a privilege to listen and explore ways to hold together the breadth of imperatives and contexts and explore how we shape our life together. We invite you to continue to join with the whole church in this time of discerning together by being grounded in faith, fueled by prayer and attentive to the Spirit, so that we may respond to God's call into our second act. Thank you, moderator.
Thank you. There will be opportunity for discussion in the working groups, but we will take questions for clarification. If there are just questions of clarification around the report, those will be welcome. We will in a moment have a further introduction to the working group process itself, but if there are questions of clarification for the report, then make them known now. Okay, yeah, there is one. Okay, please come to a microphone. And then after this question, we'll move to Rachel Kronberger will introduce the working groups. She's just there. Yes, please.
Hello, moderator. My name's Eunice McLeod from Port Phillip East. I read with interest the report from Act 2, and it may not be my place to ask, but I felt very little reference was made to Congress or any sort of acknowledgement of how the way that Congress does the church actually informed any of the choices, any of the options that were given. Thank you.
Do you want to go first or do you want me? You go.
Go ahead.
So just to say, we have 2 members of Congress on the steering committee, and we look to them in part for guidance. We've also were present at the Congress National Conference and made a presentation and had conversation, listening and talking and yarning together. Andrew and I have also been to a number of regional councils. The thing that we have consistently been saying, particularly to Congress, is your place in the church is the place you want it to be. So we're wanting to say, whatever the shape of the uniting church is, Congress will have the agency and the self-determination to develop their own structures and their own ways of being that make sense, and that we will keep then talking about how we dialogue together around that. It's important to say in relation to this conversation that Congress themselves are in a period of significant discernment about what the shape and structure of Congress across the life of the Uniting Church should be. And we don't want to rush them to come to a decision about that for themselves because we're having this conversation. So we've been in constant dialogue with them. We're constantly talking about how do we keep the spaces open and how do we be nimble and flexible enough to allow different structures to emerge for different needs. So we've been very open about that and very open to the insights of Congress members, at the same time as balancing the need to allow them the space to do their own discernment about their own life together, so that we might then have a shared life together.
Thank you. Well, we don't usually do follow-ups for clarification, sorry. But I'll invite, because there will be room for further discussion as we go. So Rachel, this is Reverend Rachel Kronberger, who's the facilitation group convener, and she's going to introduce the working group process for us.
Thank you, moderator. Rachel Kronberger, Wurundjeri Country. I'm here for the Presbytery of Yarra Yarra and speaking now as convener of the facilitation group. I'm here to guide you into the working group session today and into working groups more generally for this Synod meeting. Working groups are integral to the consensus procedures by which we meet as a Synod. In working groups, we consider ideas and proposals in the context of a small subset of the community of the Synod meeting. Some working group sessions deal with specific proposals for which we are seeking a consensus decision as a whole meeting. The feedback from working groups comes to the facilitation group, and the facilitation group advises the moderator and the Synod meeting about possible pathways forward to whole Synod consensus. Other working group sessions are set aside for reflection and discernment to advance whole church conversations. These sessions help us to delve deeply into big ideas and to together build visions as a church. So the first working group, which we'll begin shortly, will be looking at the Act 2 report. As Andrew and Sharon have shared with us, Act 2 is a national project with its decisions to be made at the meeting of the National Assembly in July next year. In order to resource that decision, Andrew and his team is asking us the same questions that they are asking groups around this country. The facilitation group at this meeting will collate the working group responses and offer them back to you in the full meeting of the Synod. We will share with you the broad themes that we've encountered and the specific ideas that have come through in the feedback. If there is a really obvious theme or a thread emerges, the facilitation group might bring a proposal to this meeting. The purpose of that proposal would be to offer a collective Synod of Victoria and Tasmania view to the Assembly. If there seems to be a majority view on some aspects, the moderator might be interested to see our consensus cards during the feedback session. In the absence of either of those, the feedback from the working groups will go directly to the Act 2 steering group. So blessings for your working group session. And as Jeff Thompson encouraged us earlier today, seek the will of God by prayer and consulting together in the light of the Word of God.
Thank you, Rachel. Can I ask if there are any questions of clarification about that process? Then I'll ask the business convener to guide us forward.
Thank you, moderator. Firstly, hydration's important. So if your water bottles on your table need replenishing, then just through the doors near the letter N there, you'll find refilled carafes of water. You need to go and replace those yourself. Working groups will need to conclude at 5:45 p.m. in order that everyone can be seated back in here to start the evening pre-dinner session, we'll call it, at 6 p.m. Your working group is on your name tag. There'll be a letter there. And in a moment, your working group leader will be holding up a letter that matches the one on your name tag. So you'll be able to find them, and then you'll be able to head off to your meeting room. A few of the groups are meeting next door at the Salvation Army Centre where we were this morning. So you'll need to set off at a tidy pace. And there's a map of working group locations on the app website, or you can ask any of the Synod staff to direct you. So I think we're ready to head off. You need to finish at 5:45 and be back in here to start at 6 p.m. And I invite working group leaders to whip their letters up and for you to find your working group.
Could the working group leaders please stand and everyone else stay seated for a moment so that you can see where the working group leaders are, so that you'll be able to find them. And now you're on, let's go.